Hi guys, it's Theo Stocker from Yachting Monthly here, and you're joining me on board today the brand new Hanse 360. It is a very windy, blustery Southampton water that we're on at the moment. We're going to head out onto the Solent for a proper sail, and we're going to see what this boat's all about. It's the middle of December, but we've got a cracking day, so let's go and have a good sail. So we've been out on the Solent, we've had a cracking sail, and we're just on our way back up Southampton water at the end of our day's test. You can see we've got a bit of wintry sunshine as well, and a good bit of breeze. We've still got 18 knots across the deck. It's been somewhere between 16 and 18 knots all day, and the boat has really enjoyed it. Now, the Hanse 360 is going to replace the Hanse 348 and the Hanse 388. And the next one up is going to be the 410, so it's got a lot of work to do. It's called the 360, and it's 37 foot length overall, but the hull itself is only 34 foot, and on the waterline you're just under 34 foot, about 33 feet, 33 foot 9 inches precisely, I think. So it's not a huge boat, but it is really beamy, as you can see. We've got 4 meters of beam, 13 feet of beam. So it's a good wide boat in the modern style with really marked chines, flared bow at the bow and softer chines aft to give a really big internal volume, big righting moment, and loads of space both in the accommodation and on deck. Hanses are known for being easy boats to sail, and that's what this boat is all about. So you've got all of the controls brought aft to the helms, and I can reach the primary winch. I can't reach the secondary winches so easily from the helm, but I can reach all of the clutches, my instruments, and all of the furling gear, which means that my guests don't have to get involved in the sailing. They can if they want to, and actually on a windy day like this it's helpful to have someone else doing some of the sheets, because I've got main sheet here and jib sheet up to starboard. The thing that I was interested to find out with the 360 is whether making this boat easy to sail and really big gets in the way of her still being enjoyable to sail. And I have to say, I've been really impressed by the sailing on this boat. Now, there's a couple of things that account for that. One is that we've got a really nice set of cruising laminate sails on. We've got an adjustable backstay, we've got a deep single rudder, and we've got composite wheels. Put all of that together, and it's actually quite tight, quite precise, quite taut on the helm. So it responds in the way that you think it should. You crank on a little bit of backstay and you lighten the helm up if you've got some weather helm. So one of the nice things about having a self-tacking jib, as well as obviously your main that's forward to the cockpit, is you don't have to worry about any of the sheets when you're tacking. Keeps things really, really simple. The boat has got a bowsprit, so you can put your off-wind sails, and you'll want that with a self-tacking jib because it's not very powerful off the wind. But this boat does come with the option of an overlapping genoa, and our boat's been fitted with the tracks for that. In terms of performance on the wind, this boat's done really nicely. She sits very happily at about 20 degrees of heel. You push much beyond that, 25, she's still okay, but you get towards 30 degrees of heel, and you can really feel that the leeward buoyancy digs in and the keel starts to lift up and we start building leeway. The nice thing with a single rudder is that the boat tells you that through the wheel, and I can feel the helm loading up a long time before we get anywhere near running out of grip. So I've got plenty of time either just to pinch up a little bit or ease the sheets off, which makes it engaging and reassuring to sail. And I have to say that for such a beamy cruising boat, and she weighs nearly 8 tons, she's 7.8 tons in the deep keel version, a little bit more in the shoal draft version. For such a heavy boat, she actually feels really light and nimble. She spins on a sixpence really quickly and has been very enjoyable to sail from that point of view, that I can really get stuck into the sailing, and I also don't have to keep an eye on the telltales all of the time because I can feel it through the wheel. I know when the boat's loaded up, and when she isn't, here comes another gust now. In terms of upwind performance, we've been making about 6.5 knots upwind fairly easily, and that's at about 32 degrees to the wind, 32 degrees. We're probably pinching a little bit, if I'm honest, just because it's quite a breezy day. But somewhere between 30 and 35 is very achievable and easily making 6 knots. We've actually stuck a reef in now because it was getting a little bit too much. But that's with wind of sort of a good solid force 5. So she's got enough power to keep going. I really like having the slab reef main, which is a tri-radial cut main with fully battened and it's slabbed reef. Lots of people might go for the the in-mast furling main. I have to say, I like the extra performance that comes with a proper slab reef main, but each to their own, I guess. The only thing, couple of tiny quibbles. The winches for the main sheet and the jib, these are size 40. I'd really like them to be a little bit larger, size 48 or something, but if you're buying one, you could easily spec that up, no problem, or you could change it if you're buying one second hand. So while we're helming back downwind, I thought I'd show you around the helm. Going downwind, in terms of performance, this boat's done really well. On a beam reach, we've got it up to about 7.4, I think was our maximum, but sitting at high 6s, 6.9, 6.8, something like that, occasionally touching 7 knots is easily achievable, and that's without putting an off-wind sail up. You put a Jenica, a Code 0, something like that, and you'll easily be going 7.5, you might touch 8 knots. Anyway, back to having a look around. The helms are reasonably far aft in the quarters, as you can see, but they've been given enough space that they don't feel squashed up, either right under the backstays or right against the rear guard wires. I'm on starboard side here, and I've got the engine controls down by my knee. Got one set of instrument repeaters there and an anchor windlass control as well, and then a radio deck speaker. This boat's got a command mic, a remote controlled command mic, so that doesn't need plugging in anywhere. I think that's just in the table at the moment. I haven't got a pedestal in front of me. Instead of that, in the aft end of the cockpit table there, I've got a big chart plotter. If you go for the navigation pack, a 9 inches standard, this boat's got the 12 inch. I quite like that because you're a little bit away from it. So you have to sort of lean across to look at it slightly, but you've got enough information without it getting cluttered. The only downside of not having a pedestal is in terms of handholds in front of the wheel, but you have got these good big grab rails on the cockpit table instead. I've got lift up helm seats behind me. It's quite nice because it is quite relaxing, just helming downwind like this. Not quite so comfortable. Upwind you will sit on these side decks, and it's really nice that the seats here are on top of the coaming, so that if there is water on deck, I'm not going to get a wet bum and the water's going to run aft over the stern of the boat. I can easily reach my main primary winches and all of the sheets and halyards that I need to get to. I did notice that I accidentally sat on my instrument repeater once when I was winching, but winching standing up is a little bit easier anyway. And then I've got good big just canvas rope bins at the aft end of the cockpit seats. And then on this boat, we haven't got any foot chocks at the moment. That's because this is a stock boat, and when an owner comes along, they can say whether they want them or not. I would definitely have some little just wooden foot chocks so that when you're heeling, you've got something to brace against. But otherwise, this is a really well laid out helm. It's a little bit tricky for your crew to get involved with some of these because all of the winches and clutches are right aft, but you can have one crew working on the cockpit bench there. So I'd say it's a pretty practical and a good layout so that if you're sailing solo, you can manage the boat pretty easily by yourself. Well, I've been out on the water today with Elliot from Inspiration Marine, and we had Adam with us earlier. I've handed over the helm now, so while we're going downwind, I'm just going to give you a quick tour around the cockpit and on deck. Now, I mentioned we've got these helm seats. They pop up, and little detail, they lock in like that, so there's a bolt there, so they can't pop down automatically, by themselves rather. And then we've got two lazarette stowage lockers. There isn't sort of self-launching life raft stowage on this boat. That is on the 410, but you could put a valise probably in the starboard one. We'll have a look in the port one for now. So there's a bit of space, but we have got some systems here. You can see there's some ducting for diesel heaters. On the other side, there's an engine air intake, which takes up a bit of a space from those lockers. But I guess they need that space in a 34-foot hull for the aft cabins. You could still put some fenders in there, a few little bits, but you wouldn't fit a dinghy into that locker. Just outboard of that then, we've also got the gas locker stowage. Let's see if I can open that. Yeah, so there's space for a single gas bottle in there, camping gas bottle. If you wanted a spare, then that would need to go in the anchor locker because there isn't space to store one there safely. We've got bilge pump there, instrument repeaters I mentioned, winches, these are Lumar size 40s, and then you've got the optional secondary winches for your off-wind sails as well, which is a nice touch. Now, one thing I really like about how they've done the cockpit on this is you've got quite nice high coamings, and then they're still surface mounted halyards all led aft, but they're just below the lip of it, so that you've got a little bit of a handhold and people are less likely to grab onto them as handholds, and a little bit less of a tripping hazard as well. So I like that. And this little stainless steel plinth for the secondary winches is really nice. Now on this boat, you would get, there's a cockpit table as standard. The standard one is just 2 leaves and some stainless steel framework. On this one, it's a big moulded unit because in the front end of it, we've got our champagne fridge, or whatever you want. We've actually got sandwiches and Cokes in there today. And then at the aft end of that, you've also got a little stowage bin. I've got phones and drinks bottles in there and stuff. So you could probably fit some binoculars in there. Always important on a cruising boat to have somewhere to put all of those bits and bobs. And when you're having your drinks in the evening, your little lantern pops up, very fancy. And then you've got the space for the 12-inch plotter on the aft end of that. You could also put the plotter on the aft end of the standard table, I think I'm right in saying. Yeah, cool. Good. Now this boat that we're on today is the 2-cabin layout. There is a 3-cabin version if you wanted it. If it was a 3-cabin version, you'd still get a cockpit locker, but it would be a sole depth cockpit locker. As it is on the 2-cabin layout, we get a hull depth cockpit locker, which is absolutely cavernous. Interestingly, they've put it on port side, which means that when you see below, the galley's on port side, so there's access into this locker, which is aft of the galley. A lot of boats do that through the head, so you get an extra shower compartment. Don't need that on this boat, so you get some access through the galley. They've actually left sort of some deck level moulding in there, which if you put some little fiddles on would provide some nice shelving. It does slightly limit access to the further corners of the locker if you're putting a big dinghy or something. But actually I think having a ready access shelf around the top is quite a nice idea. And then you can see it supported with a gas strut. It doesn't open all of the way, which is a little bit of a shame, but access in there is generally pretty good. All right. Now I'm going to come up on starboard side, opposite side to the sails, and we'll show you forwards. Just while we're in the cockpit, a couple of little details to mention. We've got these little red deck sort of courtesy lights, I guess you'd call them, so that if you're moving around on deck at night, you can see where you're going. Magnetic compass there if you want it to steer by. And this boat has, I think I'm right in saying, 16 opening hatches. It's quite a few, so there's 8 deck hatches and 8 opening windows all over the place. So ventilation should be really good, and light is really nice as well. And that doesn't count the extra windows, the hull windows to give you views out. Moving forwards then, we'll come part, the spray hood's down at the moment, but it's a good big spray hood. I quite like these, the guard wire gates to make it easier to get on and off, particularly on a boat like this that's got high top sides. And then moving forwards with the spray hood, we've got here's some grab rails which take me as far forward as the shrouds. Now these shrouds, even though we've got a backstay, are quite swept aft, which does limit a little bit how far you can sheet out with the main. As with most cruising boats these days, you've got a reasonably high boom and then a bridle main sheet mounting. I quite like that system because it means that when you're going upwind and you're sheeting in, the only force pulling on the main is pulling it across to windward. So you're not pulling it down and to leeward, and you've got the kicker to control your leech tension. I'd just like a little bit more power on those primary winches to get that main sheet in really tight. Up on deck, we've got dimple moulding. It's fairly grippy. I don't think it's the grippiest deck moulding I've seen because it's slightly rounded dimples, but actually I've felt more than secure moving around while I've been on deck. The boom's reasonable height, but not too high. So I'm 6 foot, just over 6 foot, and I can reach the top of the mainsail, the head of the mainsail when it comes down. But if you were a little bit vertically challenged, you might want to put some mast steps on there. I'd probably want that anyway, just so you can step up and pull the top of the sail down really positively at the end of the day, unless of course you've got in-mast furling. Now I mentioned the two options for the head sail. Here we've got the self-tacking jib track, and we've also got the genoa car tracks for the overlapping genoa. It's just on a little stopper so you can move them up and down. They're not towable ones. I guess if you were really into performance, then you could add that on. And this boat does actually have the option of a performance pack, which would come with a square top main, for which the backstays would then actually become running backstays. So you can really turn this boat into something a bit more sporty if you wanted to, albeit she's a certain weight, so she's never going to be a thoroughbred race boat, but you can have quite a sporty little cruiser on your hands if you want to. Moving forwards then, a couple of little pad eyes which are nice here for attaching halyards and keeping them out of the way. They're nice little details. Past these opening hatches, and this is a lovely big sun deck area. I could imagine that if you had this as a med boat, you'd have some cushions made so you could relax on the foredeck in style. If you want to stay to the side, then you've got the guard wires to hold on to. I've actually got an open push pit here, pull pit, sorry, which means that the tack of the sail can come a little bit lower, which is slightly better for performance. The only issue is occasionally with this being lower is you have to skirt the jib over the top of that. If you didn't want to have to skirt the jib, then you could always put a little strop on here and just set the sail ever so slightly higher. They have put reinforcement onto the pulpit to keep that nice and solid. I guess you have to do that a little bit with an open pulpit, but that's a nice detail. You can see here that we've got fair leads for a furling tack line, sorry, the furling line for your off-wind sails. Then we've got a moulded bowsprit, and the bow roller sits on top of that. It's not hidden underneath it. That means you can see the chain all of the time. If I open that, you've got a small anchor locker. It's not huge, but there's a reasonable drop for the chain under the windlass. It comes down a slope and then forwards. I think that should mean that you don't get piled up immediately under the electric windlass, but I'd have to check. And then built into that, you've got an anchor hook for safety, and there's a good big pad eye in there if you want to rig a snub, an anchor snubber or something like that. And the bitter end's easily accessible, and you can plug a remote for the windlass in here if you want to, but actually it's all controlled from the helm. So I think it's not huge. You could store 1 or 2 fenders in there, but you're not going to shove off-wind sails or anything like that. It's not a full-on forepeak, but there is space for your gas bottle, your other extra gas bottle if you want to put it in there. Just while we're motoring back up the river, I thought I'd tell you about the engine. This boat comes with a Yanmar engine and a 29 horsepower. It's the standard, but the test boat that we're on today has been upgraded to the optional 39 horsepower, and that's with a sail drive with a 2-bladed folding prop. Right now I'm doing 2,000 revs on that, and that is giving me 4 knots through the water into quite a stiff headwind. I'm just going to come up a little bit now. So that's 2,600 revs, which is probably quite a nice cruising speed. There we go, 4.6, 4.8. We'll probably be just over 5 knots through the water. Let's have a look. Yeah, so 5.2 knots through the water. And then I'm going to floor it, see what we get to. Should give us about 3,000 revs. You can see the rain's just come in now as well, and a bit of spray. We're punching a sort of a force 4, force 5, albeit in flat water. But that's giving me 5.7, 5.8 knots. I reckon in calm conditions you'd get 6 knots from that easily. If you had a slightly bigger propeller or a fixed propeller again, you'd get a little bit more power from that. There we go, we're just nudging 6 knots there now. And that is at just over 3,000 revs. I'm going to back it off a little bit as we come up the river. Right, well, we are just heading back into the marina now, so I've been having a little play around. I said that this was a windlass control. It's not. That's your bow thruster control. It's a bow thruster from Quick, and it's retractable, so that's turned on now. And it's really handy just to be able to give yourself a little kick either way. I have got a single rudder, which means I get prop wash over the rudder from the propeller, which helps with manoeuvring in harbour. When you've got high topsides on a boat like this, it's nice to have a little bit more control of the bow. The other thing I should have mentioned is the bathing platform. We've got a full width, really large bathing platform that goes down nice and low to the water. And we've got a full width intermediate step to make it easy to get up and down onto that. And the only other option is that you can have a wet bar, so a gas barbecue grill and a little fridge in a unit that would fill this gap here. And then for getting down onto the bathing platform, you'd lift the helm seats up out of the way. And that's nice if you want to cook your burgers or your fresh caught mackerel in harbour. You just stand on the bathing platform to use that. I'm going to concentrate on getting you alongside now, though. Well, now we're back in harbour. It's lovely to come down below, and I thought I'd give you a quick tour inside the Hanse 360. First of all, obviously, this is a huge hull for what is essentially a 34.5, 35 foot hull. Vast amounts of beam, hard hull chines, high top sides, just means that we've got absolutely bags of space in here. That's helped by this light oak Alpi veneer finish and loads of white bulkheads as well, which you may or may not like. They're a little bit sterile, particularly the forward bulkhead, which is quite a big expanse of white, but a bookshelf or some clocks would bring that out nicely. Otherwise, what that does is it makes it really light and airy and spacious in here, helped by the fact that we've got all of these hatches and window. We've got 4 hull windows in the saloon alone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opening coach roof windows. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you get the picture. There's loads of windows, hatches, and most of them are opening. We've also got one in the deckhead here. Thanks to the reasonably high topsides, I've also got loads of headroom. I've actually got over 2 meters of headroom standing in the galley here, and about 195 at the bottom of the companionway. So I've got loads of room. Now, we came down below to have a little walk around earlier while we were sailing and heeling over, and actually she felt pretty secure. Decent stainless steel grab rails to come down, 4 steps at a fairly gentle angle. So that it was easy enough to get down and then straight onto this big stainless steel grab rail by the sink. There are fiddles around the edge, but it's the grab rail that you're going to go for. I'd have quite liked a grab rail on this bulkhead here, but actually I've got the table and I've got the fiddle around the chart table, and then we've got the mast support to hold on to. So moving around wasn't too bad. That's helped by the layout, because obviously when you're out sailing and you come down, you're probably coming to the galley for a snack or a hot drink, or you're going to use the heads in there, or you're going to come down and sit at the chart table, which is just over there. So in terms of general layout, I think that works really well. Let's have a look at the galley first, because this is a really impressive part of the boat. You look at that galley and you do not think that you are on a 36 footer. That's helped a little bit because we're on the 2 cabin version. If you had the 3 cabin version, there would be a bulkhead across here, and you can see there's a little moulding, and up to the edge of this, all of this panelling here, there would be a little door here, and you get into the aft cabin there. As it is, we've got this extra pantry and fridge space there, which makes it into a huge galley. So I've got a double sink with a splashback. I've got a big top opening fridge that also opens down here at the front, and then there are lockers galore. I've got cupboards under the lockers under the sink. I've got pull-out cupboards there. I've got a drawer either side of the oven. Here you can see we've got a 2-burner ENO gas stove, for which we've got a gas bottle up on deck, and that's an oven as well. And then I really like this certainly for this size of boat. You've got loads of really usable lockers here. So you've got a good big one for boxes or bottles, nice sort of condiments, cups and glasses could probably go in there, spices, oil, whatever. I've got a drawer above the fridge, and then I've got this huge pull-out drawer freezer. Well, it's a fridge with a freezer drawer in the top. So you've got all of your sort of home comforts here, really. You'd obviously lose some of that space if you went for the 2 cabin version. The other thing worth mentioning at the aft end of the galley is we've got this hatch here, and that opens into the cockpit locker, portside cockpit locker, which is huge. I guess if you had grandchildren staying and you needed some extra beds, you could put them in there. Wouldn't be very friendly, but you could get in there. But it's really to make the bottom of that locker easily accessible, and there is bags of space in there, and that goes behind the engine compartment as well. If you were to have that as a cabin, it would be a mirror image of the aft cabin. So in the aft cabin, we've got a huge bed here. This is 160 centimetres wide and the best part of 2 metres long. So you've basically got a king-size bed in here. Reading lights on either side, they're touch on and off, which is a really nice touch with little USB chargers. We've got a good big locker here, and just under my feet here, we've got some drawer stowage. There we go. And then outboard, there's a shelf all the way along. There's no lockers here, sort of overhead lockers. That would add a little bit more storage room, but actually you've got lots of space in there and in your drawer. Plenty of headroom as well. We've got just under 190 centimetres in here, and I've got an opening hatch there and an opening hatch into the cockpit for ventilation. One thing I'm missing a little bit is I'd quite like a view out, either a window in the coach roof here or in the hull side. Hasn't got that, which is a little bit of a shame, but otherwise all good. And then just worth saying that the fuel tank is under the aft end of this bunk, and that's 165 litres of diesel you've got. Let's go forwards and have a look at the saloon. Actually, before we get there, I'll show you the heads. Now, the heads on this boat occupies a cabin that is set piece. So sometimes when you change between 2 and 3 cabin version, it changes the layout of the heads. This stays the same on whichever version you're having, so that if you don't have it, you don't lose a shower compartment. And you can see here where this join is, all of that is shower compartment. If we go in, come and join me on the throne. You can see you've got fore and aft heads here, which is quite nice because then you can use it on either tack. This one's electric flushing. You've got a sink, decent amounts of stowage under the sink there. Behind the mirrors, there's a little one. You've also got access in here. That's the holding tank. I guess you could always build a little lining in there if you wanted to have a bit more storage room in there. But you've got a holding tank sensor, which is good. And again, we've got 2 opening hatches. And the nice thing in this heads is that we've got a separate shower compartment, so you can shower away merrily, merrily. There we go. Oh, sorry, you've got your little shower attachment there, and some locker space there as well. Now, we don't have a wet hanging locker, but if you put a couple of hooks here, then if you've got dripping wet waterproof, they can just go in the shower compartment. So that's actually quite a nice solution. Let's go forwards again. Into the saloon then. This is really the heart of the boat, and it is a really big open space that uses the full width of this nearly 4 metre beam. It's obviously a little bit narrower where we are now. L-shaped seating to port and straight settee berth to starboard. This boat's got the option of a chart table. It's only a small chart table. It's a little bit crowded. I'll come and show you. So aft facing here, a little bit crowded. I'd have loved it to come out another 20 or 30 centimetres just to make it comfortable to sit here, even if you're just going to do emails on your laptop, and to make it big enough for a leisure folio chart. As it is, it's not quite wide enough for that. And I think that brings me on to one of my thoughts about this boat is there's so much space that it almost feels like it's been a little bit wasted. It got really nice open moving around space here, but actually I'd have loved to have a slightly more practical chart table. Similarly in the saloon, this is a really comfy big space, lots of area, and this bunk can turn into a double bed, so you can have extra storage here, extra sleeping space here. This base here, if I lift that up, that would pull out, and that props up, and that makes it into a proper 160 by 2 metre double bed. It's just a little bit of a shame that they've kept these seats so narrow. That's only sort of just over 40 centimetres. Another 10 centimetres would have made that a little bit more luxurious. I think there is an option to have an extra seat here to make this into C-shaped seating, but you don't get the pull-out bed option with that. That said, I think it would make it a slightly cosier, more comfortable space. as it is, there is shed loads of space for entertaining in here, and it does feel really nice and open. And then you've got this lovely big table here that locks up. 2 huge leaves on this table. There you go. So people on both sides of this big saloon can easily get to the table for eating around. So it's a good big sociable space. I'll pop that down. A couple of nice design features in this table then. We've got just a stowage bin in the top. I mean, you might choose not to put that in, and then you can put all your bits and bobs in there, so they've all got somewhere to go and they're not just lying around. And most importantly, bottle stowage that pulls out in this rather neat little sliding bottle stowage there. Let's put this down. There we go. And then we'll go and have a look in the forward cabin. Now, for this size boat, I think this forward cabin is phenomenal because you've got a pretty much full king-size centerline island bed with sitting headroom at the forward end. So that's literally just behind the anchor locker, and it is wide enough to be 120 centimetres wide. So 2 people can sit up in bed, have their morning cup of tea, and enjoy a little bit of view out of the windows there. In the middle of this berth, underneath it, is the water tank, 345 litres of water. At the forward end, you've got the bow thruster, and at the aft end, we've got a little drawer that slides out here. Nice touches with this lighting and things. It's not massive, but it's still extra storage space. And that's on top of the lockers that we've got outboard on either side. To port, you've got a hanging locker, good deep hanging locker. And then behind this door, you've got a shelved stowage space on that side. Access to your hull impellers just under the floor here. It's worth mentioning that there is an option to have a forward heads in this cabin. And if you come in and have a look at the headlining, you can see that there's a moulding there. If you went for the heads in here, it would be relatively small but perfectly usable. It would have its own opening hatch. And then the main berth, this berth would be offset to starboard, so it would still be rectangular, it would still be big, but it would be offset to one side. Just going back into the saloon then, a couple of structural things to mention to you. A lot of production boats bond their bulkheads in, which means that they use effectively glue and they stick them in. But to make a stiff hull, it's better to laminate them in, which means they become structurally part of the boat. And the fore and aft bulkheads in this boat are properly laminated in to make it really structural. The boat is made in just GRP, polyester GRP, hand laid up fiberglass for both the hull and the deck. Means you don't get quite as much. It's a little bit heavier, but it's a very solid, reliable way of building boats. And then I'll just show you in here. You can see if I use this to lift up there, you can see a bit of the hull matrix, and that is bonded into the hull. And so that's stuck down, so that's bonded in. And then if I lift up this panel here, if I can do this. There we go. Have a look in here with me, and you can see that we've got really big backing plates that are properly bonded into the hull, which is nice because then you can't get water underneath them. You've got limber holes so water can drain out of there, and then the keel bolts are screwed down onto the top of that. On this boat, we've got a 2.5 metre keel, which is a cast iron keel, slightly L-shaped. It's not got a big bulb on it or anything. But a good deep keel, and then huge backing plates to take the load. So that looks really solidly made. And then you've obviously got a structural hull matrix, GRP hull matrix, that is bonded in around the hull. Engine compartment then, let's just have a quick look in here. So gas strut, that comes up to horizontal. Not bad access, would be nice if we went a little bit higher. And we've also got a light we can turn on in there. You can see that the Yanmar 40, which is an option, is fairly well squeezed in. You'd have a little bit more space around the 30 horsepower, so 29 horsepower. And on the whole, that's really well laid out. We've got access panels to the side, which gives you access. So I've got a filter here, oil, and there's another oil filter down at the bottom, which I can get to through the side panels. And similarly, I can get to everything that I need to through the port side panel there. And if you want to get at the front here, for water impellers and alternator belts, this front panel unscrews. The only thing that I wasn't a huge fan of is that the water strainer is all the way in the back top corner, all the way back. I don't know if you can see that if I point to that. So the downside of that means that I can't inspect it visually to see if I've got seaweed or plastic bags or whatever in there. And if I do want to clean it out, I have to sort of unscrew it, lift the basket out, probably dripping slightly over my engine, and bring it out. I'd have loved that to be a bit further forwards in the engine compartment to make that a bit easier. But that's a fairly minor point on what is otherwise really well laid out. Battery, the engine starter battery is above the engine there. And then let's just have a quick look around. So other stowage, just while I'm thinking about stowage, is we've got some stowage under the berths in here. The main battery bank is under this section here. So I've got two large batteries in there. They're AGM cells in there, so you can see those. Quite like these seats because they're fairly solid and they Velcro pretty well in place. And then behind here, we've got systems and electrics behind there. You can see there's a bit of ventilation for that. We have got fiddles along the edge of that shelf, so things aren't going to slide down the back of the cushions, which is really nice. And then there's a bit of stowage inside the pull-out bed base here, which is good. On starboard side, some of this stowage, again, is used up for systems. So here you can see we've got the main distribution panel, buzz bars and things like that. I would love that to be covered by a panel, so that if you've got children or you're just fumbling around in a locker looking for something, you don't inadvertently touch exposed terminals. And then we've got, again, stowage under here. There's a bit of wiring, but that's not too bad. You've got space for toolboxes and things in there. Should have said while we were on the chart table, there is an option to have another fridge freezer under here. You'd lose the leg space for the chart table, but you could have that. Or alternatively, you get rid of the chart table completely and just have a full length sea berth, which would make that about 180 centimetres long and 50 centimetres wide, and that would be a really nice sea berth. These two sections up here have got the electronics in and the radio. You've got remote monitoring on this, which is your so all of your switch panels and things. If you lift that out, there's physical buttons on the back. And then we've also got stowage in overhead lockers, which I really like on starboard side and on port side. So good big lockers, and they've got a fiddle along the bottom, which is nice. I like that. It's a little bit of a shame they've used up two of the overhead lockers on this side with electrics and electronics. I feel like they could have condensed that a little bit more and given you a bit more stowage. So that's one of my little comments on this boat, is that in some of the lockers and stowage, I feel like they could have done a little bit more work to get systems tucked neatly out of the way and protected to make the lockers more usable stowage space for longer term cruising. Hi guys, well there we have it. That is the new Hanse 360. I hope you've enjoyed coming for a sail with me on this blustery December day and having a look around as well. Now I'm sure you want to know what she costs, and this boat, the base price from the factory and then brought to the UK and commissioned would set you back £195,000 excluding VAT. Obviously there are lots of options that you can tick on the list. When you do that to get the boat that's the same spec as this one, you come out at about £330,000 sterling, including VAT. Now, obviously building a boat like this, a high volume cruiser, and there are lots of them out there, you're balancing cost against quality of finish, sailing performance against ease of handling, and you've got to strike a balance. So I'm always interested to see how the builder and the designer have struck that balance and where they've aimed on the spectrum. I have to say that this boat has really exceeded my expectations when it comes to sailing, sail handling and performance. She was lovely to sail. She was light and precise and engaging on the helm, giving me good feedback with plenty of grip. A good warning when I was pushing it too hard. So I really enjoyed being on the helm of this boat. The cockpit layout and the sail handling means that I can sail single-handed if I want to. It was nice to have some crew on board, but if you had novices with you, they wouldn't have to get involved if they didn't want to. When you come down below, you are struck by the huge amount of space on board. You've got this really big, wide saloon. You've got a huge galley. Can't believe that's on a 36-footer. You've got a really good big heads and you've got two big cabins. Some of the stowage space hasn't been used massively well, in my opinion, and it would have been nice to see some of those systems pushed a little bit further out of the way and boxed off to make slightly better use of the huge space that this boat has. That said, I think it's a fairly minor quibble, and actually when you take into account the sailing of this boat as well and the enjoyment that we've had, I've found myself liking this boat really quite a lot.